It's in the 20s outside. The fire's going inside. So it's time for some beef stew and biscuits.
What did you say, Mom?
Cooked on the wood stove. I went ahead and sauteed the onions and the garlic, and I put a little bit of the steak in there. I used steak. I had 2 steaks that were New York strip that we didn't barbecue, or grill, not barbecue. We didn't grill them earlier before the weather turned cold, so I had them in the freezer, and I thought, you know what, now's the perfect time. I'm going to cut them up, and we're going to use them for some stew. Yeah, I could have just, cooked them up in the house regular, but it's going to make a mighty fine stew on this cold day. Now, we all know, on a cold day, if we're going to have beef stew or any type of stew or soup, then we definitely are going to have some homemade buttermilk biscuits. So, let's get a roll on. Now that my garlic and onions are sauteed, and I had a few of the pieces that had a little bit of fat on the outside, put those in there and let them brown up. I'm going to throw in the rest of the steak. And I'm going to put some salt and pepper on this steak. I'm not going to do any fancy seasonings. I might probably put some margarine, maybe some thyme in there for seasonings, but we'll see how it plays out, how the flavor goes. And one of the things that I will be adding for the broth before I put in the thickener is this beef broth. It's a broth base actually, and a seasoning, and it's some good stuff. And it doesn't have anything really funky in it either, and that's what I like about it. It's 100% natural ingredients, and when they say natural, they mean it. It doesn't have MSG or any of that other stuff that you just can't pronounce. It's got a lot of good seasonings in it, and it adds a lot of good flavor, and it really makes a very good broth. I don't use it a lot for soup because we don't eat a lot of beef-based soups other than the, hamburger potato soup. But anyway, so I'll be putting some of that in there at some point. Right now, I'm going to put the rest of this New York strip in there, get it browned up, and then we're going to toss a little flour over it. And a little salt. Okay. All right, let's brown it up. Okay, I'm going to let that brown up, and once it's all nice and brown and there's really those wonderful juices built up in there, I'm going to toss it with some flour and then add a little water. Okay, I've got a couple of tablespoons of flour in here, and it's just your normal, it's unbleached, unbromated, but it's just flour. It's not wheat, it's regular. And I'm going to add to this a tablespoon of the broth base. Well, not a tablespoon. A couple of teaspoons, about a tablespoon, because 3 teaspoons, oh my goodness, if I could talk straight today. About 3 teaspoons equivalent to 1 tablespoon. And this is not a measuring teaspoon, so it's not real accurate, but you know how it goes. We can always season it more or less later. Okay, so now it's all beautifully browned, and I've got this flour and beef base mix. I'm going to just sprinkle it in, toss it up, and then I'm going to add some water, and I'm just going to let this kind of simmer on the wood stove for a while. I'll let it stay hot like it is for a while, and then I'll move it onto this trivet here, which will reduce the heat, and just let that meat slow cook through the day. And then later, as the day goes through, I'll add in the, carrots and other vegetables, and just really get a yummy meal going. And potatoes, of course, but those will be later towards the end. Okay, and so now I'm just going to put in the water. I'm just going to loosen up all those beautiful juices, and I'll stir it up a bit. We'll stir it up a bit, cover it, and just let it cook those beautiful juices in there. Awesome. And if you could smell this, it already smells delicious, and it doesn't even really have anything done to it yet. Just good old-fashioned food. Not fancy, just food. Okay, so it's been going for about 2 hours, and I just added in the carrots that I cut up and some celery. Just a little bit of celery. I like it in my stew. Some people may not care for that. And I also moved it from the direct heat onto the trivet. It was on the direct heat for about 2 hours though, so now it'll be on the trivet. We'll just let it simmer through the day and check it in a bit. Alright, it's time to peel and cut some potatoes. I like a lot of potatoes in my stew. Some people don't like so many, so in that little batch of stew I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 these are kind of small. I'll probably put 2 more potatoes in here, so probably 8 total. And I'm going to put some in early to let them cook and let that starch out and help thicken it up too. And they'll get nice and soft, those. And then I'll hold off the rest of them until closer to the time that I want it done, because it's still probably close to 3 hours off from dinner time. So like I said, these I'm putting in early now, and I've still got the stew right now up on the trivet, sorry. So that way it's like being in a slow cooker, being in that cast iron Dutch oven. It's just like awesome. It keeps all that goodness in there. And the first 2 that I cut here, I'm cutting them small. The rest of the potatoes I won't cut this small, but like I said, I want these to kind of cook down and let that starch build up in there and thicken up that stew. And then the last thing we'll do after I put the potatoes in, all the potatoes later, I'm going to toss in some peas, because you know you got to have peas in the stew. Or I do anyway. I know everybody makes their stew a little different. This is just, you know, one more version like everything else. There we go. We'll toss that in there. It's looking good. I don't know if you can see that goodness, but oh yes, that is looking good. So I think I'll stir it real quick too.
Hey, Mom.
Alright, now we'll put the lid back on and just let it keep simmering. I think I like to put it on this heat, let those potatoes get boiling for a minute, and then put it back onto the trivet. Okay, so it's almost 4 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and add in the other potatoes, because hubby just called me on the radio and said he is heading home early because he had a dentist appointment. He neglected to tell me that. So good thing I've had this going all day and it'll be ready, huh? So I'm just going to drop in these potatoes, and then I'm going to go get some peas. And the peas actually are just organic canned peas, because our peas did not make this year. See, that's the thing. If something doesn't go, then we always have to have something store-bought. Good thing. That we had a store to go to, I should say. But it's a sad thing, because even organic in the can is just never as good as when you grow it fresh yourself, right? If I had some friends that had a garden, I would have happily done some bartering with them, but nobody that I knew this year, well, one person, I take that back, but they didn't grow peas, grew a garden this year. if you can believe that. It's kind of sad. Alright, I'll be back. I'm going to add the peas. Now, of course, these peas, rather, not these cans, these peas being canned, I don't really even have to put them in this early because it's not like they need to cook. They just would need to warm up. But I kind of like the flavors all to, you know, kind of meld together, even if just for a little while. So, these are actually, for canned beans or peas, sorry, I just can't talk today. These balled-out organic peas are not bad. Okay, so that should do it. I'm going to mix that in. We'll cover it up, and I'm going to take it off the trivet and let it get back up to a boil again. And then once it's up to a boil, I'll take it and put it back onto the trivet so it doesn't overcook. Just like that slow cook effect. And this handle doesn't actually get hot. Wouldn't do that with the rest of the pot, but that handle actually stays pretty cool because the way it's tilted. Alright, we'll let it get back up to a boil, and then pretty soon we'll start the biscuits. So let's take a look and see how the stew is doing. Oh yeah. Oh, potatoes, everything is done. I think I need just a little bit more thickener. I'm gonna give it a taste test here in a second, and we'll see what else it needs. Okay, so just got a little flour and water and a smidge more of that beef broth base, if I can say it. And we'll just mix it right in here. And this is not the best spoon in the world here for this job. Stirring job. Okay, yeah. That's just what we needed there. Perfect, and I'm getting ready to work up the biscuits here, and we'll cook them. We'll bake those on here. If you were going to bake them in the oven, you'd bake them at 425 in the oven, but we're going to do them on the wood stove, so I will put my skillet on and get it heated up, heated up, and get the lid heated up, and I'll move this to the back and just let it sit warm. So, there we go. And I'll put this right here. There we go. Alright, let me get the biscuits worked up. Okay, so for the biscuits, we're going to need 2 cups of flour, a half a teaspoon of salt, 3 teaspoons of baking powder, a half a teaspoon of baking soda, 3 tablespoons of shortening. You can use butter or you can use lard, your choice, and 1 cup of buttermilk, or if you don't have buttermilk, 1 cup of milk with a little bit, about a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, and that'll turn it into buttermilk for you. Okay, so we're going to mix all your dry stuff together, the flour, the salt, the baking powder, and the baking soda all together, and it'll look like that. And then you're going to take your butter, your 3 tablespoons of butter or shortening, and a lot of times I like to mix it because, I'm sorry, the lard just makes for good biscuits, and but the butter makes for great flavor. So I like to mix it. Make sure it is cold, because that's going to be the key. To have the butter or the lard cold. Okay, so let's get doing that. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of butter and 1 tablespoon of lard, roughly. It's not an exact science, just don't want too much of anything. So I'm going to kind of cutting it up into little blocks, and then I'm going to just chunk it in here, and we're going to mix it until it's crumbly. You can use a fork, or if you have a pastry cutter, then use your pastry cutter. Okay. And you're going to do this until it is crumbly. So the thing is again, if it starts to get soft, stick it in the fridge for a minute. If it takes you a little longer. And our house is really warm right now with that wood stove going. But sometimes what I have to do is if it starts to get too soft when I'm mixing it, then I just stick it in the fridge for just a smidge and let it cool off again. And pastry cutters are nice. It just makes it really easy. They're not really expensive. I think I paid less than $5 for this one. Okay. And you'll see how it's looking crumbly when you're mixing that in? Okay. That should about do it. When they're about down to pea size, then you've got the crumbles right. So, see how that is? That's about pea size there. So now we're just going to dump our liquid in. And we are going to mix it. Now, once the liquid goes in, you want to be very careful not to overmix. That's the big thing. And you get hockey pucks for biscuits, and believe me, I've done it. Just mix it up. And once you got it nice and mixed so that it's sticking together, then turn it out onto a well-floured surface and knead it just long enough so it's not sticky anymore. Okay. Okay. So, now we've got a nice ball here. And as you've seen, it was a nicely floured surface, so there we go. Now we're going to get this, I'm going to add a little more flour because it's a little bit sticky. Okay, now what I like to do to get those nice layers, instead of like kneading it, I just fold it over and over, like I said, till it's nice and mixed. Just don't overwork it. If your hands are hot, cool them off, dip them in some ice or something. We don't want that butter to melt. Okay, that should about do it. So let me spread that flour. Got it here. And now we're just going to roll it out and cut them. Okay, so we're going to roll this out. Got to have a little space here. We don't want it too thin. We don't want it too thick. There, that's about right. You want about, I don't know, what is that, a ½ inch or so? A little bit more than that, and we'll cut them out. And I like big biscuits, so we're going to use a big cutter. This recipe is a little bit different than the one that I've done before on the wood stove. I found this recipe. I haven't actually ever done it on the wood stove before. Found it in an Amish cookbook and really like it. Really works well, so let's see. Of course, today when I want it to work well, because I'm doing it on video, it probably won't. Separate those off. Okay, we're just going to put these back together, and we know the reworked ones are never as good as the first ones, but that's okay, they'll work. Go. And the last one will just be like a smidge. Alright, let's get these over onto the wood stove on our hot skillet. Alright, and I already had some oil in my pan here, so I don't need to worry about that. Work out just right. Now I'm going to flip them real quick. It's hot. Okay. There we go. Now I'm going to put that hot lid on, and I'm going to put some coals on it, and we'll let it bake just like it's in a Dutch oven. And let me get some coals in. Okay, we have a few coals on top, and you don't have to do that. You could just let them bake on one side and then flip them. I'm trying to keep the little keep my little dog away from the stove there. Midge, no. So we'll check them in about 10 minutes and see how they're doing. That's what they look like so far, man. They fluffed up nicely. Could have used a few more coals on the top, so I think I'll flip them real quick. That was 10 minutes on the wood stove, so if you're going to cook them in the oven, like I said, you're going to do that at 425 degrees, and you're going to do that for 15 minutes. Keep an eye on them, you know, every oven's different, but this is how they look here. So they're nice and golden brown on this side, and we're just browning them up on the other side real quick, and then it'll be time to eat. Stew looks good. And now they are golden brown on both sides, so we'll get to eating. Jonathan, give it a try. You have to wait, Mr. Hudgens.
Good.
Good? All right. We're going to cut out of here and say grace. We'll talk to you later.